ready to talk about Fox. Nice to meet you.
Nice
Amanda
to meet you.
Triplett.
William Skinner.
Whitney Holloway.
Amanda Triplett.
Nice to meet you.
Amy Williams.
Whitney Holloway.
Nice to meet you.
And William Skinner again.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you guys.
So, Fox by Margaret Wilde and Ron Brooks, a children's story about three main characters, Fox, Magpie, and Dog, who are all kind of in a relationship together and explores kind of the different parts of personalities. And we see, you know, one character who's looking for something and two characters who are offering something in return, two very different things in return. So, let's see, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of it?
You want to start?
Very good.
Okay. First of all, I just wanted to talk about the artwork because this is a picture book as well as with text. The artwork in it, most of the pages have like gloomy colors here at the beginning, and that really adds to the mood of we don't really know what's going on. It's kind of mysterious. One of the things that we talked about when we first started talking about it was also how the words sometimes go up the side, sometimes they go across the page, and sometimes they do, like on this page, it's kind of like here and then there and then here. It just made it a little bit disjointed. Even the font that they use looks more like handwriting with little squiggle marks and places where they, yeah, and some things are like in all capital letters to emphasize as well.
And we talked about you have to make sure if you're reading it you put those emotions in, or it sounds flat and not as.
Now, I've read this a couple times out loud, and I think the first time I read it was just a cold reading, and I don't think that my kids that I read it to got a lot out of it. But after I really thought about it and thought about the characters, I started using voices that kind of showed their emotions and showed their personalities a little bit more. Dog was very kind, Magpie was kind of depressed at the beginning, and Fox, of course, when he shows up all the way, like almost halfway through, he's like very sly, very sneaky, not very trustworthy. So I tried to use a voice that kind of like this. He talked with a lot of just real slow.
So it'll be interesting after what we talked about and the ending of what you guys have to say.
Okay, so do we want to start off with the questions? Okay.
Well, speaking of what you just pointed out, one of our questions was, why do this? Why not follow a normal text pattern? Why have words going up and some words going this? Why have the handwriting be so messy? And why did the author choose to do this?
That's interesting that you bring it, because we actually, one of the first things we talked about.
Yeah, they do that more at the beginning than they do at the end, and I think it was part of that mood. It's more of a jumbled mood, it's more of a confusion, and as it gets further and further towards the end, things become a little bit more plain. I think the last time that it actually has that is here where Fox is whispering like 3 times on the same page, whispering for her to go with him. After that, everything is pretty much just across the page, a little bit more standard. That's the last time that it's actually sideways on the page, when we're not sure of his intentions, not sure what exactly he's going to do.
I almost saw the handwriting, I mean, these characters are animals. And I almost saw the handwriting as a reflection of nature, because nature's not perfect. It's not pretty. I mean, all the twigs don't fall off a tree in a straight line. They kind of fall where they will. And so the disjointed sort of, text being here and there and messy, it's kind of like nature, perfect imperfection, And I saw it as, it's sort of reflected the characters in the story, perfect imperfection. They're not perfect, but, they're doing what they can. But I thought if you just had like little words, it would seem more fairy tale-ish than real, because the message the author's putting across is not nice.
No.
And I think that, I felt that it kind of reflected the feeling of the book. They don't want you to think this is a children's, happy ending book. It's not. Don't be fooled.
Since you brought that up with the whole, it's not exactly like a fairy tale. Fairy tales have happy endings. This one, we don't have an ending. We don't have closure with it. And that was one of the things that the first time I read it, even my students were like, is that it? Is there more on the back? You know, because it ends with the question of, does she make it back? Does she not? We don't even know what's going on with the dog at all at the end, because the dog's not in the last few
Well,
pages.
we don't even know really what happens to Fox other than he
Yeah,
runs off.
Fox runs off, you know, pretty pleased that he's messed everything up, and
Well, one
we
of
don't
my-
know what happens with any of the characters at the end. We're
Right.
left kind of to
Up
make
in
our
the
own
air.
judgment
Mhm.
about it, about what we think might happen.
Well, we actually asked that in one of our questions as we were talking about how Dog would feel if Magpie made it back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and would he feel betrayed or would he forgive? And if he forgave, does this open it up for this to happen again to him?
Mm-hmm.
And we, you know, going back though to the way it was written, I felt in the beginning, even reading to the students aloud, that we were in a maze, you know, that we were constantly hitting one dead end and going to the other, because, I mean, I actually had to pause and like stop and think about where do I go next in there.
With the way the text was too.
Yes, so, you know, I was trying to search for my next word, kind of with Magpie searching for, you know, what she was missing. Yeah, an identity, who she was going to be, throughout the book, so.
I think you were talking about like the dog's character, because on the very first page, when we first meet our characters, it says, "Dog with a bird clamped in his big, gentle mouth." And then the next sentence, "He takes her to his cave above the river, and there he tries to tend her burnt wing." He's a very caring, very, very nice, not just nice because he thinks that he should be, but nice because he's kind of injured as well. It mentions here in the middle of the page, this little middle section, that he's blind in one eye. So he knows what it's like to be damaged like she is. So I think, to go back to your question about, you know, would he accept her back, I think that he would be accepting.
Oh,
He would be very
We
forgiving.
did too.
When I think also, I mean, whenever Magpie does not trust, the Fox dog, you know, accepts him
Mhm.
and trusts him, you
Right.
know, and it's like, let him be.
Right.
And so, you know, I think that dog would be accepting. And I question, did dog even realize she was gone? You know, and
Mhm.
Or would
was
she
the
be back
scream,
before?
and was the scream of despair or,
Victory.
Or try it.
or,
Yeah.
or triumph, was that, you know, was that dog or was it Fox? Because we really are left in question, you know,
Of who that is.
who really is making that, you know, doing the scream.
Mhm.
So,
Well, going off of what William said before, he was talking about both Magpie and Dog being damaged. Their damage is physical.
Mhm.
Fox's damage is mental.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
And to
We don't know
me,
why.
Or psychological.
And we
the
don't know
psychological
why.
damage, we
Right.
don't know why, we don't know where the origins of that damage is from, but, you know, if you relate this back to people, you know, if these were people, I would prefer somebody with, you know, visible damage as opposed to mental damage that's
Because
not
it's hidden.
visible. Because he looks beautiful.
Mhm.
I mean, every description of him is, he is what is it, a tongue of fire flicking through the forest. I mean, he sounds beautiful, but on the inside, he is a train wreck,
right.
but you can't see that.
Mhm.
And we thought of him, or I did, when we talked about it, as he, you know, when you have I think of Full House, the angel and the demon on your shoulders, he's
Mhm.
like that temptation or demon. You can kind of apply that to real life as when you're you're being tempted, and he's that, to me, he's that,
The demon.
the
And-
demon.
And where Amy first started reading about his description, he's a tongue of fire and he flickers through the trees. That kind of goes back to the whole beginning of the setting. It's a charred forest.
Mhm.
We don't
Yes,
know
we
what
talked
charred
about
the
that,
forest,
too.
but now when we describe Fox,
Mhm.
he's like the fire.
And it destroys.
The first fire damaged Magpie, so now he's damaging Magpie possibly at the end.
Yeah, so, yeah, he's just as destroying as fire.
But in a different way.
Speaking of that, and we're talking about all these characters, and the type of, if we related these characters to people,
Mhm.
why do most people prefer a fox over a dog?
Especially when you're younger, like at the age our students
Mhm.
are.
Yeah, why?
Well, and that goes back to being, I think, challenged with a temptation or making a choice that has good outcomes or negative consequences. And so I think of foxes that, and he appears like the grass is greener on the other side, but in reality, it's probably not, you know. And so, but of course, you want something that's
Well, even some adults though never leave that stage, like they
Right.
never have that realization that marrying or spending your life with a person who's like dog is going to be dependable. They're gonna provide a family for you and their support. Whereas, but we're still, I mean, you see marriages break up after 20, 30 years because one person is still in search of fox. I mean, this is a story, they do, it's a story that, you know, kind of transcends age and experience, because there's still some part of us, we see that with people who turn to drugs, you know, instead of exercise. But even sometimes we, you know, we talked about how is there anything in excess that's good? You know, is dogs good so in excess that he will always be hurt? You know, it's always that moderation that, you know, we're searching for, and what we see is two extremes. We never see dog say, well, maybe that's dangerous, you know.
Right.
Ever step up and say to Magpie, you know, he may eat you. You know, that's always hanging over the whole story. Nobody ever says that. She thinks it, we think it as the reader. You know, fox is going to eat you.
But dog never seems to think that.
No.
He's so trusting.
Right, and is that a good thing? I mean,
That
you
could
know,
be how he lost his eye.
that's true. I mean, we don't know, and we never see him be hurt, but most people who are like that are.
Well, being
So-
too trusting in excess is not good, and being
Right.
too distrusting in excess is not good. I mean,
Right.
you know, everything is in excess. She wants this dream in excess
Mhm.
to the point of losing all reason. I'm gonna let it ride off in the back of a predator. You know, I mean,
Right.
they're all wanting something in excess.
Yeah. Taking a stupid risk to kind of reclaim what used to be.
Right.
She's not really comfortable with what her new life is like. Dog's already accepted his new life being blind in one eye, or maybe he was born blind in one eye, we don't know.
Right.
He's kind of accepted, this is the way it is now, and this is the way that we're going to, and this is, you know, how I can help others, and, but she's not sure of herself. And it's not until you get to the end, like, when she realizes, where is it, yeah, it's this page, where it says, it would be so easy just to die here in the desert. I mean, it's almost like a suicidal line right there. It would be so easy just to give up and
Well,
just, you know, whatever. And it's not until she thinks of Dog and thinks of how Dog will feel when he realizes that she's gone, that she starts thinking of others instead of thinking of
Being
herself.
selfish.
Right.
Because she's very selfish
The
in the
whole way.
beginning, all the way through, until you get to this part, right? You know, the page before the end, when she starts to think, okay, now I need to go back home. And even that last word, she begins her last journey home. Home's not necessarily the place, home is with Dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Where, you know, there's that quote, home is wherever the heart is.
Yeah,
And people usually associate, you know, that emotional attachment to home, so it's an interesting word choice.
I can't help but, being the hopeless romantic that I am, associate all of this with a marriage. I mean, sometimes when people marry each other, they complement each other's weaknesses. You know, one person's bad at one thing, but their spouse will be good at it, and vice versa.
My
That's-
wife is awesome with science, and I'm just not.
Yeah, exactly. So when Magpie and Dog join together, they even look in the water and they see a new animal, and it's them. So it's like they joined as one, as you do in marriage. But she's thinking, I want my old life. I want things the way they used to be.
It's like she's
She can't let it go.
And we do that as we get older sometimes.
Yeah, she can't let it go. And so then I see her running off with Fox as sort of an affair.
Mhm.
You
Well,
know,
it's
think about
interesting that we have the kind of these adult themes written to
In a kid's
in a
story,
kid's
sort of.
story.
Yeah.
Or is
But
it
it's
a
not,
child's
it's
story?
not really a child's story.
Right.
If you look at some of the
Yeah.
vocabulary in it, it really isn't. It's
Like
for all
charge.
ages.
Well,
Yeah.
a tongue of fire and
Mhm.
flickering and, you know, and then, and you brought up the, you know, the type of trees that,
Yeah, the coolabah trees and,
Mhm.
and there were several other things. It's just like, while we're reading it, no, this isn't for kids, or it's not only for kids.
Right. Well, I think kids can get a basic story
Mhm.
out of it, but no matter how old you are, you see yourself in this, because basically these three characters are three parts of us,
Mhm.
every bit of us. I think there's Fox in everyone. I mean, we talked about why did, you know, the author name the book Fox, instead
too.
of, you know, Magpie, because it really seems like she's the one who is our main character and
Yeah, it
is in turmoil.
And Fox is kind of like our antagonist. He's the one that's
Mhm.
creating the conflict by taking her away, but I think he's just amplifying the conflict that's already inside her.
Right.
I think the conflict was there from the very first page. He just kind of amplifies it. So we asked that question too. Why name it after Fox instead of like Magpie's Journey or
We said the
something?
same
Yeah.
Did y'all read
Exactly.
the reviews here on the back as
No.
well?
No, I didn't.
One of them, the School Library Journal, says that it's an allegorical tale. And the allegory, that's basically what we've been talking about. We can apply the thoughts from this to our life, and we can apply this to our life no matter who we are,
Or what
where we are,
age.
what age we are, our background. And that's the wonderful thing about an allegory. It's something that can apply to whoever, wherever, for different reasons. And that was one thing that we kind of liked about this, even though not everybody likes the way that it ends. Everybody can kind of see something from it and see something different from it.
Hence the reason for the artwork. I think it's more adult artwork than child artwork.
Mhm.
I mean, when you look at this, I would kind of like to have that on my wall. You know, I mean, that's the use of color, the beauty of it. There aren't these defined lines like you would see of a fox in a coloring book.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's very, even the artwork seems more mature than a children's book would be
Mhm.
to me.
Well, and it's like he's just right there staring at you.
Yeah.
I was noticing how it's all blurred kind of together, because I think like our fox and dogs sometimes do run together in our lives,
Mhm.
and those choices are
And
like
it's-
small and large.
And it's also
every day.
about that cycle of a journey. If you
Mhm.
notice the very first couple of pages before even the title,
Yeah.
it's red.
Yeah, it's red.
It because
And it's like
dog
to
is taking
light.
her out of the fire.
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
red to light.
And
Red
it
to
goes
light
back to
and then
that.
to dark, and then it's back to red again at the end when she's
Right.
out in the desert burning again.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a cycle. And you mentioned something about, how dog sometimes, maybe he does this over and over again with, either with Magpie or with other animals.
Right.
Maybe he's opened himself up and been trusting over and over again, but he's still doing the same thing.
Well, and I think the darkness of Magpie and the fire of
Mhm.
Fox is just the extremity of, what we're looking at
Yeah.
too, and that both of those.
But dog
are
is
very-
just brown and constant.
Kind of in the
Exactly.
middle.
In the middle.
Constant like dirt.
Mhm.
Yes.
Wanna do one
One
more?
thing that I was wondering is, why can't Fox have what Dog and Magpie have? Why can't he just allow himself to have that? Why does he leave her?
That's a good question.
Why?
Well, and I believe foxes tend to be loners and by themselves.
Mhm.
So it's, I think just if you're thinking about real life and how they don't stay in packs
Right.
and dogs tend to, and birds
Mhm.
even
Well,
tend
and
to.
we said, we
Yeah.
always talk about how dog is, man's best friend, going with kind of
Constant and
stereotypes,
loyal.
right?
Mhm.
But as she said, foxes are more independent. They don't stay together in groups as much. So that might be kind of a strange thing. Why did he hang out with this group? Well, he had that kind of idea that he was gonna break them up from the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly. He was
I
jealous.
thought he was going to eat her.
I felt like this whole thing was jealousy motivated. He wants what they have, but he's incapable of it.
He can't
Mhm.
get it.
He cannot make it happen for himself. So it's those people that don't want anyone else to be happy. If I have to be miserable, everybody's
Everybody
gonna be
else.
miserable. Right.
Do we want to take some
And we
questions
do
from our
have
class?
people like that in real life.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people like that.
Even at this school.
Right.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
let's take
I think
some
we're ready for
questions.
questions from our audience.
Okay.
I didn't, since I didn't read this book, I don't really understand. What were the aha moments in the plot? Those, if you had to break it down to 2 or 3 main events, what really happened?
Well, we start out with Dog saving Magpie from a fire, but her wings been burned, so she can no longer fly. And she's depressed, and he kind of nurses her, and then finally he's like, look, I can be your wings, and you can be my eye, because he was missing an eye.
Mhm.
So she jumps on his back, and they run through the forest together. And then she's like, this is kind of like flying. I'm going fast again. It's all right. And she seems to be getting better and less depressed. And then Fox shows up, and Dog's like, let's trust him. And Magpie's like, no, he's, gonna, And Dog's like, no, he's all right. And Fox eventually talks to Magpie and says, I can run faster. It'll really feel like flying.
And that's really the greatest aha moment in there to me, because she gives in. You know, you see
Yeah.
her know that she's not supposed to go. I mean, she immediately is aware of the danger, but that one last moment where he whispers and
Yeah,
she says, okay.
He whispers 3 different times,
Yeah.
and each time she thinks, well, maybe. And each time it's, well, maybe a little bit more, and then, well, okay,
I'm ready.
all right, I'm ready.
Well, in any bad decision, you have that moment. You know, that moment where you've really wrestled with the idea of what can happen, and then something pulls you to give in anyway and accept the consequence.
And what
And you just
happens,
throw it to the
and
wind.
what happens at the end is Fox takes her out in the middle of the desert, drops her off and says, there, now you're miserable, and Dog's miserable, and everybody's miserable like me.
And he
Kind
runs
of
off and leaves her
implies it.
there.
He runs off and leaves her, and she has that moment of, well, I can just sit here and die, or I can try to go back, and that's where the story ends. It just
She
kind of
gets
leaves
up.
with she's getting up and she's going back.
And-
But we don't find out, does she make it back, or anything like that.
Right.
She's so stupid.
Kind of
She
left
sounds
us.
stupid.
Well, some people do make stupid decisions.
Every day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. How does the setting affect the story and the characters? I know you talked about it a little bit, but could you explain a little bit more?
I think by keeping it as an allegory, they're not specific about a setting, but we kind of get an idea that it's a charred forest to begin with.
And then a
Never really
desert,
says where,
like a
and then a
burning
desert
desert.
later, not far
Wherever
away.
the Burra Burra tree is or whatever.
The-
There's
the
a salt
Coolabah
land,
tree, yeah.
Coolabah tree, and there's a salt land and a desert, but,
Well, the forest is,
The-
I think, very, like, right. It, you know, it protects them.
Mhm.
You know, it shelters them, it provides for them, and that is, you know, kind of in opposition to the desert
Right.
that burns and